623, 24 November 2020. This is number 2. This one was dropped today. From FortObserver.com, low intensity conflict and some, plus a couple of more tidbits right at the end. The far left study digital surveillance analytics. Far left chat room participants shared information from the Electronic Frontier Foundation on how law enforcement utilize video analytics and digital video surveillance systems. Specifically, they detailed which software platforms are used for facial recognition, license plate reading, object identification, and gunshot detection. Observers note, greater knowledge of law enforcement capabilities can increase the ability of early stage insurgencies to better evade surveillance and confrontation. Specifically, knowing which software law enforcement and security agencies are using narrows the focus of potential leftist hacking operations to compromise those systems. Alt-right stress OPSEC in propaganda production. Alt-right chat room participants urged the alt-right to embrace operational security when filming or producing propaganda. They recommended wearing all black in lieu of unique camouflage, standardizing uniforms or body armor in their groups, completely covering their faces, covering any tattoos, and replacing firearms furniture that may have a unique pattern or grain. Observers note, the alt-right largely relies on digital propaganda for recruiting purposes due to the lack of social acceptance of their views. That being so, several groups have experienced law enforcement surveillance arrests this year, potentially due to a lack of diligence in protecting the identities and locations of members. These groups are likely pushing for better OPSEC in order to maintain the flow of necessary online recruitment propaganda while avoiding law enforcement. Far left post guide to direct action. Anarchists posted an audio guide to organizing direct action such as blockading airports, aiding escaping refugees, and shutting down government offices. The guide recommended forming decentralized affinity groups, vetting all participants, requiring oaths of silence, and establishing consensus. The guide also recommended thorough planning, extensive ComSec, utilizing scouts, planting operatives in neutral observers, and sharing updates as direct action develops on the ground. Observers note. One note from this organizing guide was how much they stressed ensuring the safety and consensus concerning risk of all participants. They did so to maintain OPSEC as usual, but interestingly, to maintain cohesion and effectiveness. They argued that if every member can accept the risk of operation, they can be counted on to carry out disruption and destruction to their greatest ability. Leftists have also been sharing a hierarchy of insurgent needs based on Maslow's famous hierarchy. The hierarchy in order is public support, OPSEC, civilian help, initiative, plans, and action. Far-left groups may lack central organization, but their organizing templates are well developed and largely standardized across groups. Again, the upcoming event calendar. We're in the midst of this one, 23 through 29 November, Indigenous Resistance Coast to Coast, multiple cities. 26 November, MAGA Thanksgiving and Counter-Protest, Chicago, Illinois. 28 November, Stop the Steal, pro-Trump, St. Paul, Minnesota. 28 November, Racists Out of Raleigh, the Raleigh Anti-Fascists, Raleigh, North Carolina. On 7 December, No More Pigs, the They Them Collective, Washington, D.C. And 12 December, March for Trump, Washington, D.C. Something from this past weekend, Wauwatosa, Wisconsin had a shooting at a mall Friday. 8 people injured. That's not bad enough. The idiot mayor, with all his years of acquired wisdom, had this to say, quote, Mayfair Mall has a strict no-gun policy. Guns have no place in shopping malls or other places in which crowds of people gather. If the shooter had complied with that policy, no one would have been hurt. Liberals actually voted for that. Of course, a President Harris, because you know as well as I do, Biden is just the foot in the door, after which he's going to have the 25th article invoked against him. And it would lead the way for Harris to be the president, which is why I simply say a President Harris, is for gun confiscation. According to the Free Beacon, Senator Harris, when running for the president, was very clear when she said gun control would be an administration priority. Her platform included entertaining forced confiscation of lawfully owned semi-automatic rifles, redefining a sporting purpose for lawful firearms possession, criminalizing private firearms transfers, and repealing the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. In fact, she supports politicizing the Department of Justice. It's an interesting statement. You mean it's not run by liberals now? And using the weight of the federal government, or as I like to say, the feral government, to harass a constitutionally protected industry in a series of frivolous lawsuits to bankrupt manufacturers. Very similar to this, very similar to Harris in this regard, are Tulsi Gabbard and Barack Obama. Read, people. Read what Harris's gun control policies are. Read Tulsi Gabbard's gun control policies are. Read Barack Obama's gun control policies are. Specifically, those last two, well, specifically the last one, Obama, because he's not out of this. Scenario. A person builds a company whose logo features a particular firearm design. Said person also donates money to the election campaigns of people determined to ban the very firearm the person owns and uses and has as that person's company logo. Why? Is it that person's belief that only governments should own these types of firearms? Because you know that Harris, Gabbard, and Obama have that belief that only government should own the so-called assault weapons. As Biden puts it, these weapons of war that should be in nobody's hands except law enforcement and the military. So this hypothetical person who uses a very distinctive firearm as part of their country logo and it is actually in their name, where does that put our person? Unless I'm mistaken, well, where does that put them? Because they too, as theoretically private citizens, they would also be the targets of these anti-gun politicians to which this person is donating money to. Doesn't make a lot of sense unless they know something we don't. Sig 23 out.